Okay, in this video I'm going to take a look at Descartes' metaphysics and epistemology, and in particular I'm going to look at his argument which aims to overcome skepticism. Alright, so let's ground ourselves in the topic, which is the conjunction of metaphysics and epistemology. Metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that's concerned with the basic or fundamental nature of reality. And so it's looking at questions like, um, is the universe created by God? What made the universe? And what are the implications of what made the universe? Is the world purely physical? Are time and space actually existing aspects of reality? Or are this constructs of the mind? And then epistemology is concerned with the nature and source of knowledge. So it asks questions like, can we know the world as it really is? What are the necessary conditions for knowledge? And how does our social position impact our ability to understand the world? So Descartes is going to be focused on skepticism and how he might overcome it. So first we need to see where skepticism can come from. Here I'll be focused on one major source of skepticism. So this skepticism can arise due to what I'll call the problem of objectivity. The problem of objectivity asks the following question. Supposing we can only perceive the world through our own sense perception, how can we validate our understanding of the world? In other words, if we only ever see the world through our lens, how do we know that we're perceiving the world accurately? So when we speak of how the world really is and wanting to know what the world is really like, ultimately we're seeking an objective description of reality, which is to say we're thinking about what the world is like independent of our particular subjective experience. What is the world like independent of us? Put another way, we're asking whether the objective nature of reality actually matches our subjective experience of it, or whether our subjective experience is particular and colored such that the world is fundamentally different than how we perceive it. And this is a problem because it's not clear how we would know whether our sense perception is actually tracking reality, actually representing reality. That's because it seems like we can only ever perceive reality through our sense perception. So we need to consider whether our sense perception accurately represents reality to us. Moreover, we need to consider how we would know whether our sense perception accurately represents reality, since we can only use our sense perception to answer the question. In other words, if I want to find out whether my sense perception is accurately representing reality, I can look at pictures of reality, or I can use devices which try to sharpen the vision of reality, like microscopes or telescopes. But nevertheless, anytime I'm looking at these representations of reality, I'm still looking at them through my sense perception. Since there's no way to get outside of our sense perception to see the world as it really is, there's no way for us to know whether our sense perception is accurately representing reality. That I'll call the problem of objectivity. So if we can't get outside of our own sense perception to evaluate its accuracy, we might be tempted to conclude that we actually can't know the world as it really is. Or we can't know for sure that we do know the world as it really is. And if we concede that we can't know the world as it really is, or we can't be sure that we can know the world as it really is, we might in turn be skeptical about the possibility of knowledge. So Descartes is going to be asking a question related to this. So he's going to engage with the possibility of skepticism regarding our knowledge about the world. And in so doing, he's going to be asking both a metaphysical and epistemic question, which is, how can I know that my beliefs about the nature of reality constitute knowledge? So here he's going to ask, how can I know whether my metaphysical beliefs about the world are true? So how can I develop an epistemically sound account of the fundamental nature of reality, or how can I develop an epistemic account of the metaphysical facts of the universe? So Descartes got a specific method. He's going to try to overcome skepticism and assert that his beliefs about the nature of reality really do constitute knowledge. His goal is to arrive at an indubitable belief, a belief which cannot be doubted, which is beyond the doubt. And from that indubitable belief, he wants to reason to the assent of other beliefs. So he wants to find something indubitable, some firm foundation upon which he can rebuild his knowledge of the world. And he's going to do that through a particular method. This method is itself a method of skepticism. So he's going to try to overcome skepticism with skepticism, and he's going to employ a specific version of skepticism, which is dubbed radical methodological skepticism. So Descartes thinks it won't be useful to evaluate each of his beliefs individually to assess whether they're true. He thinks that that would be both time-consuming to look at each individual belief, but also very challenging because our beliefs are interrelated in various ways. And so it's not clear that we can isolate out one single belief from all of the rest of the beliefs, because many of our beliefs support one another. So instead, he says, as one might overturn a barrel of apples in order to determine which of the apples are causing the rotting smell, so too Descartes will cast doubt upon all of his beliefs in order to determine how they might be corrupted. So he's going to think about the source of his beliefs rather than the individual beliefs. And he's going to ask whether the source of beliefs are capable of producing false belief. If a source of his beliefs is capable of producing a false belief, if he can think of an instance where that source of belief gives rise to a false judgment, then it won't be indubitable beyond doubt, and so can't provide the firm foundation that he's seeking. Okay, so that's his radical methodological skepticism. It's a skepticism because he's going to be casting doubt upon the source of his beliefs. And the skepticism is radical since he's going to doubt all of his beliefs and not just some subset. Yet, his skepticism is methodological because he's using it as a philosophical strategy rather than a way of life. All right, so his argument begins with skepticism. So it engages in the skeptical project. So Descartes is going to engage in the practice of radical methodological skepticism. And he does so by considering the possibility of corrupt sources of belief. He thinks about ways in which his beliefs might be false. The first is going to be perception. He says, look, I'm regularly deceived by my perceptions. And so perception is not indubitable. So, for example, we can be subject to optical illusions. And one thing that's noteworthy about optical illusions is that it's possible for us to be subject to optical illusions without our knowing whether we're subject to an optical illusion. In other words, I might be driving down the road and the light might hit the trees just right, and my mind might believe that I'm seeing a fox running because of the way the shadows are moving as the result of my car moving, and I might in that instance never have a way of overcoming the illusion. So I might drive away from that moment thinking I had seen a fox. So this is an example of the way in which our sense perception is not indubitable. Okay, engaging in skepticism, he also looks at dreams. He says, look, when we're in a dream, we can't tell that it is a dream. And so the information we're processing in the dream would be perceived to us as we're dreaming as real. And at least some of our beliefs may be formulated by dreams and or validated in dreams. But since dreams don't accurately portray reality, those beliefs may be false. Next, he becomes more radical. Here he posits the idea of the evil demon. He says, we could imagine an evil demon constantly corrupting our beliefs. So the evil demon would make it seem like one thing is true, when in fact it is false. And this could radically corrupt our beliefs. So even mathematical and geometrical truths could be false. We could just be constantly deceived by the evil demon that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Okay, so here I think it's important to point out that Descartes certainly had like a religious conception of the evil demon in mind, but we could also imagine the possibility that we're in a kind of matrix, which systematically produces a false reality for us. Or as other philosophers like to put it, we can imagine that we're brains in vats, having a reality fed to us through hardwiring into our brain. The illusion that would be created by the evil demon or by the matrix would be so thoroughgoing, so systematic, that it would appear real to us, but ultimately it would be a false presentation of reality. Okay, so here's where Descartes is going to try to pivot away from the skepticism. He notes, look, as we think through all the ways in which our beliefs can be corrupted, when we review all the ways that we can be misled, we are all the while still thinking. For example, we have mental images, which we take to correspond with the world. Although these mental images could be false, they don't actually represent the world, they don't correspond with reality, they might fail to get it right. Nevertheless, we still have the mental images. That itself cannot be doubted. The existence of the mental images, maybe they're false mental images, but they still exist as mental images. Likewise, even if we're dreaming, and what we're dreaming about isn't true, still, it's the case that we are dreaming. This can't be doubted. Moreover, regarding sense perception, he says, look, we often sense things, we smell, we see, we taste. And these perceptions could all be false, or some could be false. And they could fail to correspond with reality. So like the sweet wine could be bitter, or to take a contemporary example, the sheep on the hill could be white rock and not sheep, but we could perceive them as sheep. Nonetheless, things do in fact seem this way to us. This cannot be doubted. Finally, even if the evil demon has systematically corrupted our sense of mathematics, such that the square looks to us as though it has 4 sides, but it actually doesn't have 4 sides, that's just been the evil demon producing the false sense of reality, that it looks to us as if it has 4 sides, that can't be doubted. So, says Descartes, look, here we are, we're doubting our mental images. We're doubting whether we're awake. We're doubting whether our sense perceptions correspond with reality, and whether our general judgments about the world are true. We are, no doubt, engaged in the act of doubting. Thus, he arrives at premise 4. I can't doubt that I'm doubting. In other words, premises 1 through 3 are instances of doubting. So he says, our sense perceptions are sometimes faulty. That's an instance of doubting. He says, when we're dreaming, we don't know that we're dreaming. That's an instance of doubting. And we can't prove that we are not being misled by an evil demon. That's an example of doubting. So therefore, even if it's true that our sense perception is false, even if it's true that we don't always know whether we're awake or dreaming, and maybe even it's true that the evil demon has systematically corrupted our beliefs, it would still follow that we're doubting. So therefore, we can't doubt that we're doubting. Okay, from this premise 4, we can't doubt that we're doubting, he's going to say, well, doubting is no doubt a form of thinking, for it's a kind of cognitive activity. Thus, he's going to arrive at premise 5. I can't doubt that I'm thinking. In other words, the content of premises 1 through 3 make manifest the existence of thought. Even if all of my sense perceptions are faulty, I can't doubt my thoughts about those sense perceptions. Even if I'm confused about whether I'm dreaming or not, I can't doubt that I'm thinking about what happened in the dreams. And even if the evil demon is corrupting my view of the world, I can't doubt that I'm thinking about the world and whether it's true. So I can't doubt that I'm thinking. And thus he's going to reason that the activity we call thinking is going to require a thinker. In other words, if there's going to be thoughts, if there's going to be this mental activity that we call doubting and then thinking, there must be a thinker. So premise 6, thinking requires a thinker. All right, continuing the argument. Finally, he argues that if he can't doubt that he's doubting, and if doubting is a form of mental cognition that requires a thinker, he can't doubt his own existence, even if he can doubt every other belief regarding the nature of reality. Thus his conclusion, I think, therefore I am. So if he's gone through the practice of radical methodological skepticism, he's revealed how all of his beliefs could be false. But one belief that doesn't seem to be false, even if the rest are, is that doubting is occurring, that the practice of doubting, the practice of skepticism, is being engaged in. And furthermore, doubting is a form of thinking. It's a kind of mental process. And, he says, mental processes like thinking and doubting, they can't happen without a thinker. There's got to be some thinker which is doing that process. So even if the evil demon is systematically corrupting his beliefs, it's still the case that it's his beliefs that are being corrupted. So his thinking, his practice of thinking, is itself proof of his own existence. So there he has arrived at his indubitable belief, the belief that he is a thinking being. So here's his argument in full. Premise 1, our perceptions are sometimes faulty, and they lead us to believe falsehoods. Premise 2, when we are dreaming, we don't know that we're dreaming, and so we could be dreaming right now. And we would therefore be believing in falsehoods. Premise 3, we can't prove that we are not being misled by an evil demon, or we can't prove that we're not living in the matrix. So we can't prove that our beliefs are not being constantly corrupted. But, premise 4, I'm doubting my perceptions, whether I'm awake, whether my sense perception corresponds with reality, and whether my general judgments about the world are true. Premises 1 through 3 are instances of doubting. So, given that I'm doubting is true, I can't doubt that I'm doubting, even if I doubt everything else. And if I can't doubt that I'm doubting, then I can't doubt that I'm thinking, because doubting is just a form of thinking. It's a kind of cognitive activity. And, he says, thinking requires that there is a thinker doing the thinking. Therefore, I can't doubt that I exist, says Descartes. All right, in summary, in the first part of the Meditations, Descartes seeks to find an indubitable belief. He engages in what he calls radical methodological skepticism to explore the various ways his beliefs can be corrupted. Despite his ability to systematically doubt all of his beliefs, he discovers that he can't doubt that he's doubting, and thus that he's thinking, and finally that he exists as a thinker. And, finally, from this indubitable belief in his own existence as a thinker, Descartes will continue on in the Meditations to reason from this indubitable belief to the conclusion that his beliefs about the nature of reality are ultimately justified, that he does, in fact, have knowledge about the metaphysical nature of reality.